hello there. This is June Alma, and welcome back to the June Alma Show. And to continue, we have another episode. We have another segment here, and this time we have with us a very a former mayor of Baras, like Che here has introduced earlier, and he is also very active in um, the RH bill advocacy because he is president of the Pro-Life.
Immediate past
Oh,
president
immediate past
of the
president of
Alliance for the
Alliance for
Family,
Family, and also a top official of the Pro-Life.
pro-life party list, yeah, as
Yeah.
the legal counsel of the pro-life.
Oh, the legal counsel, yeah. So he is active in the mediation with the palace, and he represents also the CBCP,
The CBC.
or Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines.
Yes.
And so tonight we will be discussing a very hot and controversial topic, which is the RH bill. And of course, I know all of you are right smack in the middle of all these pros and cons, and the very controversial topic. And so we have a very um, competent expert with us tonight, a former childhood friend, and
Still a friend.
still a friend, the former mayor of Baras, and faculty expert of the UANP Graduate School,
Institute of Political Economy.
Institute of Political Science. Please welcome Attorney Dindo Garciano. Welcome to the show, Dindo.
Hi, Georgie. It's been a long time. and
Yeah.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. We guested
Yeah.
him once upon a time in my radio show a
Yes,
few years
yes.
back,
Mhm.
and it was also the same about Manila with June Alma, and now it's
Yeah.
evolved into a TV show. Thank you. It's
Mhm.
nice to have you back.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. So, Dindo, tell us. We know you're very active in the propagation of the um,
The anti-life,
An-
the
anti-RH.
anti-RH,
anti-RH
advocacy.
advocacy.
Pro-life,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Please,
Pro-life advocacy.
please tell us, your stand
Yes.
and how it came about.
Well, yeah, Georgie. Many things have been argued about the RH bill. It has been attacked or argued on the medical perspective, on the legal perspective, but seldom has it been argued on the public administration or the public policy perspective, despite the fact that the RH is legislation. The RH bill is a legislative initiative. No? So it being a legislative initiative, it is a policy initiative. Okay? So I teach public policy and local governance in the graduate school of the Institute of Political Economy of the UANP. No? And I have taught my students, and academically, you would call policy as a curative action. It's like medicine. Okay, it's a medicine to cure something. And policy being a curative action sought to cure a well-defined policy problem. So the authors of the RH bill has defined the policy problem here as the high incidence of prenatal deaths and post-abortion scenarios. No? And so the policy that the authors seeks to implement, no, is legislation, because legislation is a form of policy. Okay. Other forms of policy will be executive remedies or executive orders or administrative orders of the executive. The judiciary also has judicial policies. No? So in the crafting of policy, you choose the best alternative. So if the policy problem or the thing that is sought to be cured is the high incidence of prenatal death and post-abortion scenarios, the question is, would legislation be the answer or administrative remedies be the answer? Would legislation that provides the state intervention on the use of contraceptives and condoms be the answer? Or administrative remedies with respect to increasing the budget, for example, of the Department of Health or the DSWD, so that it can afford to hire for free, no, or to give services for free, doctors, no, who would provide medical services, so that the prenatal deaths, no, will be solved, no. So my point is, the curative action, which is the RH bill that is being pushed by the proponents, is not the proper medicine. Okay? Because how can you cure a policy problem, which is prenatal, well, the increase of prenatal deaths by a legislation which recognizes or which wherein the state promotes the use of contraceptives and condoms. No? So it is non sequitur. It does not hit the problem direct on the dot. No? So what would definitely attack the problem would be doctors. No? Doctors or medicines, okay, but not contraceptives. No? You mentioned that I was a former mayor, and as a former mayor, a lot of my constituents approaches me for help. Okay, so let's say, for example, that I have two pockets, no, and on the left side is money, on the right side it's condoms and contraceptives. And a constituent of mine approaches me and said, Mayor, I need help. I don't have money for food. What will I give him? Will I give him money or will I give him condoms? Of course, if I give him condoms, he will not vote for me anymore. No, that's in effect telling him that masyado kasi kayo nagpaparami. Nagiging burden tuloy kayo ng munisipyo. See? So that is the effect of giving condoms or giving contraceptives to someone who's asking your help because he cannot eat anything. Okay? Now, of course he would appreciate the money as assistance because he could buy food for money, no? To sustain him. No? That is also what the RH proponents are saying, that the high incidence of our population causes poverty. No? With the example that I've given, that is an exact manifestation of the non-relationship, of the non-correlation of poverty to the high increase in population, no? Or the economy with respect to the high increase in population. Because if you have a big population, your remedy is not to decrease the population, but rather to feed the population or educate the population, or to provide medical assistance to the population, but not to tell them, not to tell your constituencies or the people not to propagate more. See, so demographic problems could not be solved by economic solutions. Also, economic problems could not be solved by demographic solutions. See, so the proponents of the RH bill, in connecting the economy to the population, is committing a big mistake in terms of crafting policy.
I also find it misleading,
Yeah.
Dindo, that the title of the bill is responsible parent. They sort of name it also as responsible parenthood.
Yes.
And I find it misleading that, you know, when you go through the details of what the bill is really, the motive behind the bill, you will find out that it's actually a cover-up for maybe something that is should have been better treated by finding the root cause of trying to control population.
Yeah,
That's what they want.
Yeah, legislation is always coupled with appropriations. Okay, no legislation would proceed without the corresponding funding. So there is always a provision in all legislations with respect to appropriating funds to implement the legislation when it ripens into law. You know? The RH bill proposes, or the proponents of the RH bill proposes, a 3 billion peso
Wow.
budget
That is too
on
much.
the first, on the very first year of the implementation of an RH law. So every year there will be a budget that will be submitted by the Department of Health, including now a budget on reproductive health because of the RH law. And that budget would have an increment, no, of at least 15 to 20% increase every year. So you're only talking of 3 billion for a start. But it will increase yearly, and this 3 billion plus would just be used to buy condoms and contraceptives. Okay, so meaning to say that the population, the 85% of our population, which are Catholics, are subsidizing the state's program of supplying contraceptives and condoms to our health units all over the country. That is the effect of that.
My goodness.
That is not the argument that is
Yes.
being highlighted, no? Because they talk about medical arguments, economic arguments. They will focus on TV the people who are begging on the streets, no? But the real intentions is covered.
It's covered,
It's
right?
covered.
That is what I wanted to.
It's covered
to
because definitely there will be appropriations. Taxpayers'
Correct.
money would be spent
So
for this.
what is the percent of that 3 billion out of the whole budget?
Oh well,
that
well,
they
3
appropriate
billion.
for
Well,
projects?
well, no, let's we can quantify
Would
the 3
you
billion.
approximate rough figures?
No, okay. When you talk of budgets, and you quantify it in terms of deficits, budget surplus, or a balanced budget. When your expenditure is more than your income,
Yes,
you have a
there's
deficit. When your income is more than your expenditure, you have a surplus. When your expenditure is the same as your your income, then you have a balanced budget. No, so you would now look at it in terms of how the 3 billion would affect the budget deficit of our country. No, in terms of spending taxpayers' money to more important things to be spent on because of our meager income.
Correct.
Okay, so would 3 billion be an appropriate expense on the part of the state to spend, no, and to increase it yearly on an average of 15 to 20%? If you are, for example, having a terrible budget deficit.
Just like what we have.
Yeah, that's like what
Would
we
it
have
be
right
prudent
now.
to appropriate that
Yeah, and
3
again-
billion in that avenue when in fact we have more urgent needs like infrastructure?
Yeah, and again, it can open the floodgates for further corruption, because
Of course, yes.
there will be biddings, there will be government
Correct.
purchases, and who would benefit? The pharmaceutical companies. So I would like to think that this can be a legislation for the benefit of pharmaceutical companies, because the major suppliers would be the pharmaceutical companies, at the expense again of
Correct, at the
our
taxpayers,
poor.
Yeah. And why does it have to be at the level of the policy, has to be at the level of the legislative? I mean, can this not be just,
Well,
because every kid
correct.
right now knows already about all these condoms and all that. They don't need to really go into
Yeah.
the mechanics of purchasing and then
Yeah.
distributing to everybody.
Yeah, correct. No, number one is, of course, the aspect of appropriation. Of course, as I have said, a law would have a corresponding appropriation inputted in the legislation itself. No? If it is a mere administrative order, there is no point of compulsion on the part of those who would
Correct.
be asked to obey. No? Because it's a mere administrative order, it doesn't have a coercive effect, no? Like a law. Because a law is of national
Yes.
application.
Does it need to be
Yeah.
mandated as a national
Yeah.
policy, a law? When in fact,
The main intention for it to be made in a law or to make it as a national compulsion is for all of the local government units in the country to implement the policy. Because if it's going to be a mere executive order or an administrative order, we have our government is decentralized in nature. No? There is local autonomy, and the national government could not compel local chief executives to implement programs which would run counter to the visions of the sitting local chief executive or the mayor or the governor. No? So to make it compulsive in nature, a law is needed to implement it. That's why.
yeah, but it's interesting to note that, even like a huge country like the United States or China is the most populous country in the world,
Yeah.
but it's also the biggest economy of the world.
Yeah.
Next is India. It's the second most populous country in the world, but they're also the second most progressive country now in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
world.
but
And third
because
is United States, same thing. Third in, highest population of the world, and they're also third, the most progressive country in the world.
Yeah.
So corollarily, I do not see the wisdom behind,
Yeah, those are the economic dividends, what they say, no? Because
Yes.
what are the factors of of an economy, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur, So when it comes to labor, labor for a strong labor force is an economic indicator. Like for example, who is solving our problems right now? Economic problems is being solved by our OFWs.
Yeah. We have more controversial topics to discuss and explore. I hope you stay tuned, televiewers. We shall be back shortly in a while. Thank you.